righty. Thank you for joining us for our ACE Spotlight series. Here within the series, we are highlighting past, present, and potentially future members of our ACE community. And first up, we have Theresa Wood, who was a member of our EPIC program. And without further ado, I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and get going with our ACE Spotlight. Theresa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Theresa Wood, and I had the privilege of being a part of ACE in 2023 to 2024. Sorry, 2022 to 2023. I served an ACE position under the EPIC umbrella. I was in partnership with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I had a position on a national wildlife refuge down on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. But yeah, a little background about me. I am from California. I'm from the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. And I grew up always having an interest in the outdoors and wildlife and wanting to somehow be able to pursue those passions as a career, but not really knowing how to go about doing that. And so I went through college, studied biology, and gradually learned more about what a career in wildlife biology could look like. And yeah, it was a bit of a winding route to get there because
Yeah.
I didn't have anyone in my family or anyone close to me pursuing that kind of a path. Not really anybody in science even, so just learning what all of that looked like, and then also getting through college. I come from kind of a lower income family, so being able to work and pay my way through, applying for scholarships, all that definitely took some time and energy away from being able to fully focus on my studies. So, anyways, I made it through. I graduated, and then
Very good.
after my first job out of college, a shorter field job, I was able to find ACE and accept a position. So that kind of is what led me to ACE.
That's incredible. That's like a journey. I mean, especially through the hurdles that you had to jump through and just, as life happens with it, especially being a first generation college student and kind of going through that path of, potentially being, again, and you said like science-based, right? Maybe not first generation, but, taking that first step kind of along a different path, right? I think that's really, really courageous. And a lot of folks kind of follow their passions, and their dreams. The next question you actually kind of alluded kind of right towards the end of that question, which what I had is kind of how did ACE, come into your life? How
Yeah.
did you learn about ACE? What kind of positions really intrigued you? And kind of a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I learned about ACE just from seeing some job postings on the Texas A&M job board. I I was just getting close to the end of my first position out of college. That was a field position as a wildlife technician with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. And it was great and I learned a lot from that job, but it was temporary as most of the first jobs in this field are. And so as I got into the fall, I was looking for something where I could continue building the wildlife experience. And I saw this position posted there with working on the Mississippi Sandhill Crane National Wildlife Refuge. And I had never really thought about the possibility of like moving to Mississippi. I hadn't really thought about living in the South, but the
That's
work, the description sounded so cool and so hands-on with the species and like the work that was going to be just the main focus of that position that I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. I'll apply. I'll look more into this. And I did, and I was offered the position and I accepted it. And honestly, like I couldn't have imagined how much um, of an impact it was going to have on me with like the variety of skills I was able to gain at that job and how much I really loved it. Like it did take a bit of time adjusting to Mississippi and the Gulf Coast just because it was new to me, but I fell in
right.
love with it. I honestly did. And I loved my job and my time with ACE there. And yeah, I'm sure I'd be happy to go more into that if we have
Yeah,
time.
no, please. Honestly, my kind of my follow-up question is that kind of what skills kind of within that, when I think of, a refuge, I think of, things that probably aren't maybe reality, but like what kind of skills did you learn within your time, in your term there?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. The term refuge is also sometimes can get confused with like sanctuary, and it kind of is. It's
Right.
more of a nature preserve with the specific focus of conserving particular species of conservation concern. So
Okay.
at this refuge, those main two species that we spent much of our time and effort monitoring and surveying for and managing and assisting with the reintroduction program for were the Mississippi sandhill crane, which
Okay.
is a actually a non-migratory subspecies of the greater sandhill crane. So they are specifically adapted to living on in the longleaf savanna, the longleaf pine savanna habitats of the Gulf Coast.
Just
And
that
their
region?
habitat,
Sorry.
yeah, just kind of
Just,
like, no, please jump in whenever. Yeah, there used to have large swaths of that habitat all along the Gulf Coast,
okay.
but it really has shrunk due to development and the suppression of natural fires. So this refuge is one of the last actual um, pieces of that habitat left. And so we got to kind of be involved in all aspects of the management of the habitat in turn, which in turn helped us manage the crane. But we also like did all of the hands-on tasks involved with the reintroduction from captive rearing programs that partnered with us. So we didn't actually raise cranes there at the refuge, but we were partnered with the Audubon Zoo and White Oak Conservation Center to do that. So we would get these cranes that
What a
had been
cool
raised
partnership.
in in these programs, and we'd release them, and then we would track their survival and their behavior. And then besides that, the wild population already on the refuge, um, we would trap them for banding and release. We would use camera stations to monitor where on the refuge they were. We would do a lot of nest surveys during the springtime and then monitor the reproductive success and the fledging rate and all of those things. And so it kind of gave me, yeah, just like major insight into this is one of the longest standing crane reintroduction programs in the world. And to be there and learn from that was, I
That
mean, there's so
institutional
much.
knowledge.
Exactly. I learned so much. So that was where a large chunk of my time and energy went, but also to the dusky gopher frog, which is another critically endangered species only found in southeastern Mississippi.
Wow.
And kind of like the crane, both of these species underwent severe population decline, kind of bottoming out in the 80s, the 1980s. They were both down to, the cranes were down to 30 individuals. Now they're up to 170. So still very small, but doing better. And the frogs were down to one breeding pond, just like a very small number of individuals. And the same kind of thing happened. A reintroduction program was started, so, very intense monitoring efforts, and it's led to a lot more ponds now having breeding, and ours is one of those where they were reintroduced. And so me and my fellow ACE member, we were involved with the whole captive raising process for those guys and like collecting the eggs and hatching them out, tagging the metamorphs, and then releasing them. So
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Well, also, I didn't know too that you had another ACE member serving with you. So you kind of had
mhm.
like a buddy with you for that part of it, at least. That's really
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we both served the same year long term. It was a whole
cool.
year with ACE through the EPIC program, and it
Mm.
was great. Like we worked well together and kind of learned a lot from each other's experience coming into this, and then kind of having somebody there to go through it with was great.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Can
Mhm.
imagine. What's your favorite memory of, or do you have a favorite memory, a favorite moment that you can from your time there that you'd like to share?
Yeah, oh gosh, there were so many good ones, and I didn't even begin to mention all the other
Oh,
uh,
I can
things we
imagine.
got to be involved in. I'll just list off a few so people know how much ACE can allow you to do. Because we also got to help with other bird surveys. We got to go help on some nearby refuges with sea turtle surveys and nesting surveys for sea turtles. There was a bald eagle banding we were a part of. We learned some pesticide work, and it got to do rare plant surveys and
Oh,
yeah, just calling frog surveys, bat surveys,
my
acoustic
God.
monitoring. So yeah, there was a
Wow,
whole
that's
swath of things.
Yeah, that's like very holistic when you again you think of wildlife biology and wanting to get an internship and learning a lot of different things. That's a what a unique experience. That's really that's the wow. I can only imagine all the things you learned within that year.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, so much, and it
Cool.
really, yeah, it was. I'm very appreciative of that. But a couple favorite memories are
Yes.
one that sticks out to me is one night we were doing a breeding survey for the dusky gopher frogs, the adults coming into the pond to breed. And it was a rainy night. It was like midnight. We would be there all night for these
Yeah.
surveys
Oh
sometimes.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And yeah, so just like wet, dripping wet, tired, rounding the edge of the drift fence, which is kind of the metal wall which
Okay.
blocks the frogs' movement so we can see and tag them and all that, and then release them to keep going to the pond. I round the corner of the fence and there is this snake with a frog halfway sticking out of its mouth. Like just the back end of this frog is in the snake's mouth. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Oh my God.
he's killing our frog.
You're like, no, I need that subject. Wait a minute. I need
Exactly. I'm
that.
like, it's one of our critically endangered frogs. You can't just do that.
But
But yeah,
nature.
my coworker is really good with snakes. He immediately knew it was not like a cottonmouth. I was still like, which is it? Water or like water snake, cottonmouth? Like, I'm
Yeah,
not just gonna grab it until I know. But
exactly.
he was like, okay, it's a water snake. I'm good. And he grabs the snake, pulls the frog out of its mouth, and like
Did you save the frog?
amazingly, the frog is still alive. Yeah, he was bleeding out of some bite marks on his back, but we just kind of hung on to him for the next half hour, 45 minutes, and he was just kind of dazed. And then he just started hopping around. We like put some water on it to like get
Mhm.
the blood off,
Like, yeah,
and
just
he
kind
was
of clean
fine.
it.
And like later on, we caught that frog again, so we know he survived. And we released the snake. I hope he found another meal that was less
Not
endangered.
endangered. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Wow. Oh
yeah,
my gosh, that's wow. That's a memory and a half. Oh my gosh. I'm glad that
pretty memorable.
yeah, I'm glad that your partner knew snakes because that is not a forte of mine.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't necessarily have a phobia of snakes, but
Uh-huh.
that would be that would cause me to pause for a minute. I'm glad that you had like I mean, I hope that I would also have another person to help. Oh no, I know what this is. I can take this. That would, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that was one of those examples of working in ACE. You get to work with so many people
Yeah.
and you get to learn from so many people. And like he already had a really strong knowledge of snakes and herps. So he shared that with me, and I had a little bit more mammal experience maybe that I was able to share with him. And yeah, that's just one of the perks of ACE as well. So
That's
at
really
least in
awesome.
my experience, it was great in that way.
Yeah. Oh no, I love that. I love that. Switching gears a little bit, I kind of want to know where are you now? What are you doing now? Are you still with Ace? Have you moved on? Like what's your story now?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually sitting outside my house, right outside of Sequoia National Park in California.
Beautiful.
Um, yeah, I'm living and working in both Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. I'm on the wildlife crew here, mostly getting to contribute to conservation efforts for the fisher, which is a forest-dwelling mesocarnivore. It's in the mustelid family. Very elusive animals, but incredibly cool. So I've been here a little over 6 months now. I work the winter season, getting to help trap them and take measurements and data on them, and then also attach GPS collars so we can then track their movement in the parks and see what habitat they're using, what their ranges are like, and especially a focus of our work here is to see how the fires that we've had in the past years
Mm.
have affected their use of the parks and their use of the habitat here, because they
That's
rely so much
huge.
on old growth forest. But yeah, so I get to do that. I've also begun helping with some of the California spotted owl surveys,
Oh,
some bird surveys here. So it's been a bit of a variety as well. But yeah, just getting to continue gaining some wildlife biology field skills.
that's incredible. That's incredible. So again, switching gears a little bit more now, what's next? Do you have plans? Do you have ideas of what you kind of want to pursue career-wise, where you want to be? I know you've kind of done the South kind of the Southeast Gulf Coast within Mississippi, back in California. Do you have any ideas of kind of what's going on next for you?
Yeah, I don't have another job lined up yet, but this one is still going for a little while for me, so that's good. But I mean,
Is
long term, I'm
season.
looking at. Thank you. Yeah, long term, I'm hoping to get a permanent position as a wildlife biologist. And I think in the long run, I'd love to be in my home state of California. I do love it here, but like I said, I worked in Wyoming, I worked in the Southeast, and everywhere I've lived, I've just like fallen in love with the places I've been
Mm.
and like the opportunity that those places have brought me to explore new ecosystems and landscapes and
Oh yeah.
cultures in those areas too. So,
Yep.
um,
I
yeah,
love
I don't know if I'll be moving around a bit more prior to that, but for now, I have this position going for a little while longer, and I've begun interviewing for some permanent positions uh, for
that.
after that. So, I'll see how what goes on
Yes.
with how
Best of
those end.
luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I really loved working with the Fish and Wildlife Service in
Hmm.
when I was in my ACE position. I kind of really just their mission and the smaller size of that agency, I really appreciated. Oh, mosquitoes. But I've enjoyed working with the National Park Service. The State Game and Fish Agency was great as well. So we'll kind
That's
of see where I
great.
end up, what kind of agency or organization. But yeah.
Yeah, that's really, I love that you've had such a diversity of work, both within agency, but also within region. Like, I think that's
Mhm.
really, really unique and special. And I mean, I think it's also part of like the lovely world of conservation that you can
Mhm.
work with different agencies and you can work in different environments and doing different skills and, but it's all kind of tied under, the conservation umbrella. Um,
Exactly.
and I
Yeah.
love that because again, like how else again, like you said, like you had no idea that you were going to end up in Mississippi. Like what?
Yeah.
That was so far off, and then there you were, right? And I love. I mean, conservation has taken me to a lot of wild, literally wild places, both domestically and internationally. I remember my first trip was in the North Cascades National Park, where I was a high alpine researcher, and I had some of those kind of weird moments too, where you're like, whoa, like where you're just learning so much and absorbing so much. Um,
Mhm.
and then but also again like learning more about yourself too along the way, which I
Mhm.
love, and figuring out again what's next.
Yeah.
So wow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, honestly. I think it's just the being open to new opportunities and um I think in this field especially it can be pretty competitive. It can sometimes be a little intimidating to start out in, especially if you maybe didn't have if you didn't know much about it going into it, but you
Yeah,
have that passion and want to pursue that. I think just one of the best things you can do is just keep your eye out for opportunities and then be open to where they might take you and what kind of work you might get to do through them and that'll just lead to more and more opportunities as well.
I love that. Honestly, with that, I'm going to end with that lovely piece of wisdom and advice. Thank you so much, Teresa. I know the mosquitoes are probably getting at you right now, that
Yeah,
that time of night.
absolutely.
But thank you so very much for joining us
You're so
today and
welcome.
chatting and sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it. And good luck with those interviews with those permanent positions.
Thank you so much. This was great to talk to you.